the top richest architects. Welcome to another episode of All-in-One Luxury. If you enjoy this type of content, then subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss out on any of our latest and greatest uploads. The richest architects in the world have managed to reach the pinnacle of a very demanding and technical line of work that also requires a decent amount of artistic ability too. As the highest paid architect in the world would attest, it is also a very lucrative industry for those who excel at their profession. Who is the richest architect in the world though, and how much are they worth currently? The richest architects in the modern world. As nations around the globe continue to expand and urbanize, architects are in higher demand than ever before. It is one of those professions where the designer's creations will most likely outlast the person who created them, leaving behind a legacy of memorable structures that are both practical and works of art at the same time. To learn more about these designers and discover who is the richest architect in the world, look no further, as we have all the information you need about the highest paid architects in the world. Ma Yun-song, $10 million. Ma Yun-song is a designer and theoretician who holds a master's degree from Yale and is currently lecturing at his alma mater. His professional work has mostly centered on offices, museums, residential architecture, cultural centers, and installations after his training with Zaha Hadid, who had a big effect on his formal education through the application of digital technology. Ma strives to achieve an equilibrium between people, the metropolis, and the ecosystem in a model of a future city, centered on the emotional and spiritual requirements of its citizens, with its primary design ideology based on Feng Shui City. The notion of Feng Shui City emerged in the 1980s. The goal in principle was to build towns and urban neighborhoods that would enable people to live outside of nature, but also be able to easily return to it. The proposal unfortunately remained essentially theoretical and was never realized. Feng Shui architecture is a mixture of urban concentration, form, and function, an artistic perception of the surrounding ecosystem that not only evokes nature, but also represents a person's emotional reaction to the environment. Ma Yun-song is also famous for the design of the Absolute Towers in Mississauga, Canada. Sir David Adjaye, $10 million. Sir David Frank Adjaye is a renowned architect who has made a name for himself with his thoughtful, culturally relevant, and universal architecture for everyone. Adjaye was born in Tanzania in 1966 and grew up in numerous places before staying in London, where he was subjected to various cultures and architectural styles. In 1993, he earned a master's degree from London's Royal College of Art. As a child, Adjaye traveled widely across the Middle East and Africa as a result of his father's diplomatic work, which enabled him to acquire a greater level of cultural awareness and introduce him to a range of architectural forms. His trips particularly have been acknowledged as inspirations for his design approach. His book, Adjaye Africa Architecture, is one of the numerous creative undertakings that sprang from his journeys. Over a 10-year period, the project documented 54 important African towns and showcased urban chronology, maps, and satellite images that came together in a thorough investigation and reconceptualization of what African design is and may truly be. Adjaye is particularly famous for thinking up the design for the National Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C. Maya Lin, $12 million. Maya Lin, who was born in Athens, Ohio, rose to prominence at Yale University when she won a nationwide competition to create a Vietnamese Veterans Memorial to be constructed in Washington, D.C. Her architectural projects, monuments, sculptures, and parks are all linked by her vision of creating a space for people within the landscape. She comes from a well-educated and creative family. Her mother is a teacher of literature, and her father was Ohio University's Dean of Fine Arts. She stated that, as the daughter of immigrants, you have the notion of where do you belong, where have you gone, and attempting to establish a home. She is inspired by culturally varied influences in her architecture and sculpture, such as Indian earthen mounds, Japanese gardens, and 1960s earthworks artists. Her most famous design, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, permits the names of the individuals who died in the war to talk for themselves, tying a tragedy that occurred in a foreign land to the ground of the country's capital where it now resides. Lin splits her time between Colorado and New York. Kung Jian-yu, $15 million. Kung Jian-yu is the owner and chairman of Turinscape, one of the most notable architectural companies in China. In the last 20 years, the ecological urban renewal designer has been a part of several initiatives that have changed China's urban design. Landscape architecture, according to Yu, is the discipline of survival. He is widely regarded as a pioneer of ecological urbanism and the productive postmodernism approaches to ecological development. He is well known for his concept and implementation of sponge cities, his novel concept concerning sustainable ecological designs. The Chinese administration has used Sponge City as a leading example for planning land use, eco-city campaigns, and urban environmental regeneration. He sees himself as a creative ecologist who conducts designing experiments. Yu's ecological model for urbanization has been adopted in over 200 cities across China and abroad. His Sponge City designs have been widely recognized as groundbreaking nature-based strategies for adapting to climate change, with schemes for water retention at its heart. The aim is to be highly water conservative and based on an ideology that is diametrically opposed to that of traditional gray infrastructure approaches. Bjarke Ingels, $17 million. Big Bjarke Ingels Group was created in 2005 by Bjarke Ingels, who had previously worked at the Metropolitan Architecture Office in Rotterdam. Bjarke has built a name for developing structures that are as functionally and technologically creative as they are economically and environmentally conscious, through a succession of award-winning designs. He was designated the spokesman for the new European Bauhaus in 2021, and in that same year he co-founded Naber, a lifestyle design firm. He has earned various renowned distinctions and medals, and Bjarke Ingels' net worth is now said to be $17 million. Ingels' firm is a collective of designers, architects, urban planners, landscape specialists, industrial and commercial designers, and innovators situated in New York, London, Copenhagen, and Barcelona. The company is now working on projects across the Americas, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Its architecture is the result of a meticulous examination of how modern life continually evolves and changes. Ingels believes that by using the fruitful overlap between utilitarian and utopian thinking, architects might discover the freedom to alter the surface of our world to better suit modern living. Renzo Piano, $20 million. Renzo Piano, one of the most well-known architects of the modern age, was born into a household of architects. Following his undergraduate studies, he started getting work in London and Philadelphia, with the London trip particularly impacting his professional growth. This was the start of a varied worldwide career that has lasted more than a half-century and has made him one of the most successful and richest architects today. Renzo Piano started his career by securing the winning design for the Centre Georges Pompidou and is now famous for his work on the Shard in London, England. The concept was picked from hundreds of applications throughout the world, and it remains groundbreaking and extremely emblematic of the high-tech architectural trend to this day. Piano and Rogers' partnership ran from 1971 through 1977. Following that, Piano collaborated with a slew of other notable architects. His work ranges from trade show booths to historic landmark restoration, and from process and material research to boating vessel and furniture design. Currently, Renzo Piano's net worth is estimated to be approximately $20 million. Frank Lloyd Wright, $25 million. Wright's mother was convinced that the baby she was expecting would grow up to be the best architect in architectural history. She used the Froebel system of teaching, which taught children to sketch using fundamental shapes and patterns. His father instructed his son to appreciate music as an architecture of sound. He moved out of the family home at 20 years of age and traveled to Chicago in search of design work, where he found the designs of Adler and Sullivan, asked for a position, and trained personally under Louis Sullivan for approximately 7 years. He then proceeded to open his own company in 1893. His creative mind grew as his activities progressed. The diversity of forms, thoughts, structures, places, theories, and breakthroughs that streamed forth from him appeared limitless. He left behind a group of individuals committed to the notion of organic architecture in the form of the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation, which continues to conserve and defend this renowned masters of records and philosophies. Frank Lloyd Wright's net worth is believed to be around $25 million. Zaha Hadid, $95 million. Zaha Hadid's aesthetic emerged very early on in her career, when she designed a renowned concept for Hong Kong's The Peak. It was to be a deconstructed tower that would cause a stir in the architectural world. Unfortunately, the proposal and most of her bold concepts from the 1980s and early 1990s were never realized. They were deemed too avant-garde to go beyond drawings, and she gained a name as a paper architect. Hadid remarked that her architectural projects were not meant to leave a personal imprint on society or to be self-indulgent. Instead, the basis of Zaha Hadid's approach and work is solving 21st century difficulties and solutions. She stated that architecture should promote societal progress and eventually our personal and communal well-being. The structures created by her own and the collaborative creativity of her team, Zaha Hadid Architects, may appear whimsical and perhaps even a little brash at times, yet they all come from architecture's fundamental role: to ease everyday life by making our environments more pleasant to work, play, and relax in. Zaha Hadid's net worth is said to be somewhere around $95 million. Frank Gehry, $100 million. Frank Gehry has been dubbed the most significant architect of our time by some. He has transformed the field of architecture in several ways, and he intends to do so with each venture he undertakes. For more than a half-century, Frank Gehry's innovative designs have altered the notion of creativity within architecture. He has created some of the most famous structures that have transformed contemporary architecture. Some of his most well-known works are the Walt Disney Concert Hall, the Guggenheim Museum, and the Louis Vuitton Foundation. Frank Gehry has acquired quite a substantial wealth over his successful architecture career stretching over 50 years. Frank Gehry's net worth is estimated to be around $100 million. When he was 28 years of age, he was tasked with designing his first private apartment. He was assigned alongside his former classmate and colleague, Greg Walsh. The development took place at Idlewild in California. The structure's architecture reflected a form that would eventually become identified with his future projects. Norman Foster, $240 million. Norman Foster is currently the highest-paid architect in the world. Norman Foster's net worth is estimated to be in the ballpark range of $240 million. Foster is widely regarded as a pivotal character in the modernist architecture of England, having been closely involved with the conception of high-tech architecture. Foster worked as an aide to architects Johnny Beardshaw and Partners in the 1950s. The other employees told him that if he wanted to work as an architect, he needed to create a portfolio of designs that included various points of view and workshop designs from Beardshaw's business. Foster's sketches captivated Beardshaw so much that he elevated him to the drawing design department. Foster relocated to the United Kingdom in 1963 and founded his own architectural firm. Foster also worked on numerous projects with Richard Buckminster Fuller, the American architect that became the catalyst in the formation of an ecologically conscious approach to architecture. Initial designs by Foster revealed a complex high-tech philosophy, yet since the turn of the century, his work has developed into a more sharp-edged modernism. Foster presently serves on the board of Article 25, a charity that designs, builds, and manages creative, efficient, and sustainable structures in some of the world's most hostile and volatile areas. The world's richest architects are so well renowned due to their magnificent achievements in the world of architecture. Thanks to their efforts, the designs of buildings continues to evolve, making our living environments more pleasant and sustainable to live in. Maybe it is not only important who is the richest architect, but who is able to leave a positive mark on the way we interact with the world around us with our cities and buildings. And with that, we've reached the end of this video all about the top richest architects. If you enjoyed this video and found it interesting, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content just like this.